thegearnetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
This is AC Slade, and you're listening to the All Bets Are Off podcast with Robbie Vegas.
What's up, rockers? This is the rockstar Robbie Vegas coming at you with another episode of the All Bets Are Off podcast, and today my special guest is Jess-O-Lantern. She is an awesome musician, great songwriter, combines horror and music, and if that name does not sound familiar to you guys just yet, it definitely will. Please check her out after you hear this interview. She's very personable and down to earth. The interview is a lot of fun, and it was just a great experience to have her on and hear where she got started, and she tells some great stories. So let us know what you think. Follow us on social media at ABAOpod. We are across the board. We're really pushing our social media now, so jump on that, interact with us, and we will continue to bring you these awesome interviews like the one we have for you today. So before we fully jump into this interview, I do want you guys to know that today's podcast is presented to you by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co. And be sure to add our podcast in the How Did You Hear About Podgo section of the application. And again, that's the All Bets Are Off with Robbie Vegas podcast. Now, let's get Jess on the phone and get this interview started. So Jess, thank you for being on the All Bets Are Off podcast. I truly appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you for having me on.
So I want to know for you, what came first? Was it music or was it a love of horror, spooky Halloween things?
Oh, man. It was a close tie, but I believe I started playing music before I was, quote, openly allowed to be into horror. I grew up in a real conservative household, so Halloween wasn't really a thing that we did, and so I was able to at least pick up a guitar when I was about 11 or 12, and started really focusing on writing music as I was getting older from there. So I think music came first, technically.
Now, was that 11 or 12 when you got into music, or is that just when you started playing?
That's when I started playing guitar.
Okay, so you had already probably at that point, had your favorite bands or singers or whatever that you were already listening to, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I started singing when I was about 8. I remember I had this cassette tape that had it's dating how old I am right now. I had a cassette tape that had a karaoke piano version of a song from Anastasia, and I think I played that thing so much that it snapped in half.
Oh man.
Always singing.
All right, kids, so a cassette tape was this thing. No, I'm just kidding. So who were some of your inspirations in music then, and who are some from now?
Oh, man. Then I listened to a lot of what my big brother was listening to. He's 6 years older than me, so I used to steal his CDs a lot. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of Green Day, Offspring, but then he also really liked R&B, so I got a lot of my vocal runs and things like that from Mariah Carey. You wouldn't expect that one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of variety. Also, my grandpa used to listen to a lot of Johnny Cash, so I got a little bit of country in there as well, but not in the conventional sense for modern country.
Right. Yeah. So how old were you when you actually started playing gigs and having local shows and getting paid to actually perform?
Well, the getting paid part came a lot later.
For all of us.
Yeah, exactly. I first, like this is a show, right after I graduated high school. I know I played some like talent shows and things like that in high school, but not as Jess-O-Lantern, but just as myself, playing out. I did a lot of acoustic gigs, a lot of open mic nights and things like that in college. Basically anywhere that I could perform, I was trying to perform if it fit into my schedule.
That's fair. I mean, I swear all of us, like musicians or, for me being in the professional wrestling business as well, that's the way we do it at first. It's just like, oh, you want me to do what, where? I'm there.
Exactly.
People are going to watch me do something I like to do. I'll be there.
Yeah.
So now, when did you start writing your own music?
I believe I was writing lyrics before I was writing songs because I couldn't play the instrument yet. Mm-hmm. So I guess 12. When I started picking up the guitar is when I started piecing those things together.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So you're pretty young when you were already starting to compose, really.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it composing. It's like a really refined, complimentary way of explaining it. But yeah, I was piecing together lyrics and music and trying to put them into a melody. Yeah.
Well, so
but
now
not as Jess-O-Lantern though. Again, that came later.
Where did that name come from?
So, an ex-boyfriend of mine, actually, I can credit that one to him because I think it was an Xbox handle or maybe it was my first Instagram. It was years ago at this point.
MySpace.
And yeah, I know, right? No one was in MySpace, at least that. I think it was like one step after MySpace. But I was looking for a name, like a handle to have, and I'm really bad at coming up with names like that. And he's like, you should have something that's like spooky, but also, your name, just so people could find you. And he just came up with Jess-O-Lantern out of nowhere. And I'm like, you know what, that actually sounds pretty cool. It's got a nice ring to it. And yeah, I can never take credit for that name from now on. So at least that came out of the relationship, though. Thanks,
yeah,
dude.
right. You got something positive. It's all good. So let's kind of start tying it all together then. So how old were you when you started to get into like horror movies and spooky Halloween type things?
Well, my very first job was working at Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios, Florida.
Wow.
I was 18. You have to be 18 in order to audition to be a scare actor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in school in Orlando, and I bummed rides from people because I didn't have a car. I took the bus for like 2 hours to get to work every day just because I was obsessed with the job. Working as a scare actor, literally scaring people for a living, even if it was only for a couple of months out of the year, it was electrifying. It was an amazing experience that not only sparked a deeper interest in horror and all things related to the genre, but also meeting other people that are also into those things. And, they say that like haunted house performers tend to be like a family because we're kind of a traveling band of weirdos. And so like it's an interesting bond. And I continued working at Horror Nights for 5 seasons. So for 5 years, basically, working in between doing like zombie crawls in Orlando as well. So anytime we got a chance to dress up like a dead person, I was there. And that also sprung the deeper interest in finding out about the movies that I missed out on as a kid, and giving myself homework assignments basically to catch up on the classics and educate myself a little bit more on this genre that I just was so in love with.
Well, I mean, obviously you had a passion for it if you were going to go back, check everything out, so you must have realized right away that you loved it. So do you remember what your first few horror movies that you watched were?
Oh man, they're still my absolute favorites, the Evil Dead and Army of Darkness series.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, hands down. Evil Dead 2 has been my favorite horror movie of all time, easily. Just because I love puppets. It's one of my other passions is puppetry. And so the use of puppetry and practical effects in that movie, it's a work of art. Oh,
that's awesome. And now you said those were still your favorites from then. What other ones did you really latch onto when you started, like you said, doing your homework?
I love the classics.
Like Universal Monsters?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, because also working at Horror Nights, there's that through line of Universal Monsters. Just you're surrounded by that in the parks too. And I'm actually reading Mila Nurmi's biography that her niece wrote. It just came out this past year.
Really?
I'm obsessed. I've always been obsessed with Vampira. She's one of my biggest influences, and reading up about that and knowing from when I was in my college years watching Plan 9 from Outer Space and like, any of those classic horror hosts as well, I definitely dove in to do my homework there.
That's excellent. I love all that stuff too, so you're like speaking my language right now. So
Awesome.
So how did you decide that you were going to combine the music with your love of the horror genre?
It started to just kind of make sense. When I moved to New York City, I moved in 2013, I was working at a haunted house called Times Scare. And I love the name of it. It's since unfortunately closed down, but like that place was super important to my experience here. And when I was working there, I unfortunately couldn't survive on the paycheck. It was like a passion job. It wasn't a New York City surviving job. Mm-hmm. And I unfortunately had to leave and get what I was calling at the time a big girl job. And I got a job working in this office that was just absolutely miserable, and I hated it, but I was eating. And so I actually wrote the song Corpse Revival about my boss.
Oh, wow.
And he doesn't know that, obviously. I'm since very much long gone, not working there anymore. But at the time when I realized that I was no longer working in the place that was truly making me happy, I had to find a way to incorporate that back into my life somehow. And so I wrote Corpse Revival because I was just angry at this dude who was just being like so mean and like micromanaging. He was also really like, he's kind of misogynistic at times too. I know he's never going to listen to this interview, so I can say that. I
mean, we could send it to him if you want.
You know, right? But, hey, some people are like that, whatever, floats their boat, okay. But at least I got a good song out of it. Because then, after I started writing that one, I was like, that is really fun, right? Combining spooky songs and combining that element. And then I realized that was the other thing I was missing, was the theatrical element of being able to dress up like the dead girl. And I wasn't able to do that in my day-to-day. Yes. And so I needed to find an outlet. I needed to find a way to bring that special part of my experience at Horror Nights and all that, that horror culture was for me back then. I had to find a way to bring that back up to New York City with me and ironically give it new life in order to bring it back so that I would be able to continue doing that in some way. And that's really what it is for me still, being able to, no matter what I'm doing in my professional life, to pay the bills, I'm still able to have that, that special experience, a special piece of myself still alive in some way.
That's huge. And, I kind of want to stay on the topic of, the first song you wrote, but writing in general. Now, when you sit down to write these songs, are you pulling these experiences from your life and just making them into like a spooky type vibe? Or do you ever get like inspiration from, I love this movie, I'm going to write a song about it?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Totally both, yeah. With Corpse Revival, it was kind of an accident because I didn't write it as I'm going to write a horror song now. It was literally like I was at work on the computer at work, and I was like, notepad, and I just started typing lyrics about burying my boss alive. And so it just kind of was therapeutic at the moment. But normally there's a general process. I either have the lyrics in my head or a melody pops up in my head. If I'm walking down the street and I'm humming and all of a sudden I have a melody, I'll just record it onto my phone, the audio just humming, so that I can then go back and add it in. So it's piecemeal. It just, I rarely am able to just sit down and go, it's songwriting time now.
Yeah, right.
Get like all of the pieces out. I wish. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you because I know this is the same way it is for me now. So I totally relate to that style of songwriting currently. However, when I was younger, like a teenager or in my early 20s, I could literally sit down and say, it's time to write a song and write a song. And I can't do that anymore. Did that happen to you too? Because one, I feel like the songs I'm writing now are better, so that's okay. But back then, I could sit down and be like, I'm going to write 3 songs before I stand up again, and I could do it. Those days are over.
Well, I mean, yeah, I feel the same way, especially because back then, I guess you think about it this way, you had more to choose from before you started writing.
Right.
Because you can't go, oh, I already wrote that, or oh, that's a riff I already did, or I have already done that chord combination. So like you think of it that way. If you just haven't done anything yet, it could potentially be easier.
That's true.
And also, if you have like a bunch of pent up teen angst to get out on the page, that might also have something to do with it.
You're right. You got me. So now we're composers.
Maybe.
Composers
with a lowercase c.
Yeah. I like that. Now, when you started writing and combining, the horror culture with your music, do you have other musicians who you look to for inspiration? That because it is a fairly popular thing, but kind of like more people who are in touch with like the underground music scene. Like you got bands like The Brains or like The Creep Show or bigger bands like Wednesday 13 and Rob Zombie. Did you look to any of them, or were you just kind of like, I'm just doing this, I don't care what anybody else is doing?
I mean, I take inspiration from a lot of different sources. I'm a big fan of the Dresden Dolls, and anything Amanda Palmer's basically done. And I know she's not horror, but what she does lyrically and poetically, I'm really inspired by. And that early dark cabaret movement as well, kind of pushed some of the spookier elements and less of the horror elements of what I do. But I mean, horror punk in general, like when you step away from the Misfits,
yes.
like when you're like, okay, yes, Misfits are there, woohoo, yay, and I'm a fan of the Misfits, I'm not going to knock them at all, but
right.
I feel like what horror punk is now is its own thing in existence alongside the Misfits. We're inspired by them, but there's so many bands that I would frequently be put onto a bill with, I'm thinking about Argo Goolsby, I'm thinking about the members of Blitzkid, and, even, before we were, everything was shut down for COVID, like, I just booked a spot on one of the New York tours, the New York performances of the Blitzkid reunion tour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's just like, there's so many. I'm thinking about my friend Emilio in the band Dark Ride, he just started releasing his EP. Like, there's solid, amazing horror punk bands that are out there that
really
nobody's like, like Calabrese and the Stellar Corpses. Like, I could literally sit here and just keep listing bands. My boyfriend's in a band called Devil in the Belfry. They're also inspired a lot by horror genres, and they have a song called The Blob. Like, I could go on without risk of rambling, though.
No, I mean, I'm just...
I do take inspiration from them. Not about, like, I'm not, counting woes. Because, there's, like, a woe prerequisite, and some people think in horror punk. But, like, I am inspired by them to the point where I want to be part of that movement. I want to be part of that family. And it really is, at least it had been feeling like that. It's been, a year. It's been a year and some change since any of us have played a show, but I still feel it. I still feel it's there, and we've been keeping in touch online as well, and digital releases and things like that, live streams. It's still alive.
So, well, two things actually. One, I want to say I fucking love the Stellar Corpses. Dead Stars Drive-In is amazing. But my question was kind of leading into what you were just getting at, is when the pandemic hit, and obviously we're still in it, did you find yourself like having to find new avenues of creativity, or did you just go, all right, I'm going to write a bunch of songs and see what I got when this thing is over, and then we'll get out there and play them in front of live audiences? Or what was your like mindset? Because getting that taken away from you as a musician, that was hard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in it. We're not able to play in New York City still. I know there's a lot of places that are, which is I'm still trying to figure out like how that's been able to happen. I'm jealous of them, but good on them. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of just waiting it out for the first month. Yeah, just trying to be like, okay, I just had 4 gigs cancel. And, like, those were, like, within a few weeks of each other. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, if all of those are canceled, then I guess I can sit here and either twiddle my thumbs or I can figure out something to do. And it took me until about April. It took me, like, another couple of weeks for me to decide, you know what, I need to try live streams. And I did a handful. I did a pretty big number of them at first. And then I started getting booked for those conventions that I would normally go in person to play, like Dragon Con and Horror Hound Convention.
Yeah.
But I was recording them from my office, and it was just so strange. And I would like change the background to like make it look like a different place, because I'm like, oh, this is Dragon Con, this is Horror Hound, I have to make it look different. So it's just, it messes with your head a little, because you're like, you are going through the motions, but then as soon as you finish playing, like, there's no response, there's no audience, there's no energy. So it also kind of weighs on you. And that, to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I haven't done a live stream in a while. Just, it's been a lot. You know, I've been trying to focus on, I was working on the album with Batcave Records up until recently, when the album came out in February. So now it's like, all right, well, now what are you waiting on? You better start doing live streams again. So I know. Hopefully soon.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully we get back to more and more live shows, because, you know, you're in New York City, I'm in Western New York, and shows are starting to come back here, but not quickly. Like, you'll see one here and there. Like, I just went to Rochester a few weeks ago to see Virus from Dope, and he was just doing an acoustic gig up there. So, like, you're starting to see it come back around, but it's very, like, sketchy, and it's like, are we allowed to be here, or is this, like, an illegal event?
Exactly.
You know? But hopefully soon. But let's talk about your album. So, you said the album came out in February, and I would imagine that you got a great response from it, because it's a great album.
Oh, thank you.
So, like, talk about what went into that, like, the songwriting process, the recording process, Batcave Records, whatever you want to tell us stories, you know?
So it was a bit of a long time coming, which makes me happier about the quality of the album, especially given the circumstances. When I say that, the original plan with Batcave was for me to actually fly out to LA and do my vocals like at their studio and like actually work close together, literally close together, on these songs.
So not 6 feet apart.
Yeah, exactly, right. So, of course, the pandemic threw a bunch of wrenches in that, but we had gotten started on the album before COVID happened.
Okay.
And so that was a bit more of an improvised move at the end. Once the tracks were finally done and it was time for me to do my vocals, that's when the lockdowns were happening. So I got real creative, and I recorded my vocals in my office. Oh,
wow. So you did that yourself?
For the most part. Like, I recorded the actual tracks, but I did nothing of the editing and the producing. That was all Batcave's wonderful team. Okay. Yeah, I just sent them my raw tracks that I very rudely recorded in, like, I think I posted a picture on Instagram of my setup, which was literally my iPad covered in blankets in a wardrobe. And I did the entire album, all of the harmonies, the leads, everything, into that wardrobe on the iPad.
Wow. That's actually really cool. And now those recordings that you did at home that way are on this album?
Yep. That is what is on Candy Screams. Those are all the ones that I did in my tiny little office in Queens. Wow.
That is amazing. Like, honestly, that's impressive. For real.
Thank you. So that's Batcave's editing team, though. I mean, they did amazing things with those vocals.
I can't even wrap my head around that right now. That's really cool. Now, if I asked you to pick a favorite song on that album, could you do it?
Oh, God.
I guess not.
I always hate that question. It's so tough.
I mean, that's why I ask it.
I know, right? I guess Happy Haunts is probably just because it's one of the first songs that I actually wrote for that album. Mm-hmm. Happy Haunts and Siren's Lagoon are like the old school songs that were from, like, I was playing those in person at Dragon Con like years ago. Oh, wow. Being like, hey, it's going to be on the next album. And then, I have the album, yay! But yeah, Happy Haunts is one of those that's close to me just because I'm from Florida originally. I grew up going to Disney World, like having that connection to the Haunted Mansion. Mm-hmm. It's a special thing for me. So also just the way that Batcave produced that song. Oh my goodness. Like I even told them when they sent me the rough tracks for it before it was even finished. I was like, this is the best one. Thank you. I can't thank you enough.
No.
Like, I think I remember I literally told Dusty, like, this is the best thing I've heard all year. Thank you so much.
That's fantastic. And that's got to feel good, too, when you hear your vision come together when, you know, it's like they know you enough to know, like, this is going to be the sound that she's going for.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it wasn't the first one that they did, too, because they were recording bits and pieces of the tracks, and that wasn't the first one they finished. So I feel like that was good, because they kind of got the feel of the album by that point, just so down pat by that point. It just made me so happy. I'm really proud of that one.
Just going back to that, you know, you're talking about Disney and all that. You were an actor for them, but were you ever, you know, an actor in any, like, indie horror films or anything like that?
I worked for Universal. I actually did work at Disney, but not as an actor. Funny story behind that, though. I'm too short.
Come on, really?
Yeah, I think that's funny, actually. Too short to be a Disney princess. But anyway.
Wow.
So yeah, I did some indie, like, college level indie. Really, I remember a really ridiculous indie film I did where, like, it was like an 80s horror movie themed. Like, it was set in the 80s, and so everybody had, like, ridiculously lavish costumes. And I remember having, like, purple streaks in my hair, and, like, I got shot in the head. I remember that. I cannot for the life of me remember the full title of the movie, though. It was so long ago. I remember getting shot in the head, though. That was fun.
I wish we could get our hands on this. I want to see this
right?
movie.
I know. It's got to be floating around YouTube somewhere.
All right, so to bring it back to the music, though, now, do you have a dream, like, tour you'd like to be a part of with any band?
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
Any band?
Any band.
Oh, man.
Give me a few bands. Like, give me a lineup if you want.
Not like a realistic, like, this could actually happen, like, let's book this and make it happen, but like a dream lineup.
Exactly.
Okay. Oh, man. Because now I'm thinking about bands that aren't even, like, together anymore.
I mean, you can do one of each. Hit me with, like, your dream, and then hit me with one that you're like, this could realistically happen soon.
Okay. Combination of the two, then. Let's say... Actually, I keep thinking... I only go back to, like, the bands that I would want to tour with. Like, that I could actually tour with.
Yeah.
There's a band from Tennessee called Fable Cry that I'm absolutely obsessed with. They're not a horror punk band. They're like a dark cabaret band that's really kooky and kooky and spooky, for lack of better terms. They're awesome. I met them at Dragon Con, and we were actually originally gonna tour. That was like the discussions were we were talking about the idea of touring together before COVID happened. So I feel like Fable Cry, the Dresden Dolls, and let's get, like, real specific. Let's see. The original lineup of Stellar Corpses.
All right. That's a great lineup right there. Wow. I told you, I'm a fan. So, like, you're throwing some names out there, and I'm like, oh, I love them. Oh, I love them. Let's talk about your album just one more time, because I want you to let everybody know where they can find it, number one. But do you already have, like, in your mind, like, a few songs or melodies or whatever that you're working on for the next album, even though the last one just came out?
I did have one song that was totally complete that I sent to them that I, like, just barely missed the deadline.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, like, they wanted me to write even more for the album, and so I just kept on going. And I would send them, whenever I would have a new demo, I would just email it to Dusty immediately, be like, here, have this thing. And, like, I wouldn't know whether or not it would officially come back for, like, another couple of days or so, and I was like, oh, I just missed that one. So I do have one, like, completed, ready to go, that they hadn't done any production on, but it was done on my part, just, like, guitar and vocals.
Yeah.
And I do have, like, some ideas for more. But I haven't really been writing new material within the last few months, just because with the album coming out, it's been more of me trying to remember how to play my songs. Since I haven't been playing out and, you know, playing even my live streams in a while. So it's more so me having to practice.
I mean, I completely get that. And plus, too, I mean, like, I guess... why start writing the next album when you have to get out and start performing this one when this all ends? So it's...
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You know. So before I let you go, I want you to let everybody know where they can find your album. If you have like your own website, plug all your social media. I want everybody who listens to this who doesn't already follow you to be able to find you super easily, because honestly, the album is great and I want everybody to hear it and just put it all out there.
Sure. Let me see. I'm actually making this super official and pulling up my business card here. All right, Candy Screams is the new album, and the best place that you can find Candy Screams is on the official Batcave Records website. So search up Batcave Records, and it's also available on every streaming platform you can think of. iTunes, Spotify, literally anyone that you can think of, it is most likely there. I'm also on Instagram, Jess-O-Lantern, no hyphens there, unfortunately. Still figuring out why they don't let me do hyphens. I'm also on Facebook as well, and my Bandcamp, where you can get the first 2 albums that I have for download, in addition to a Big Cartel store if you are interested in those hard copies, those CDs, and any other merch items that I have on my virtual merch table. You can get that at my Big Cartel as well.
Awesome. And you have like t-shirts and everything?
I do, but I only have like large and extra large left.
Oh, right. My size.
I have like 4, I think, left. I gotta go through my inventory.
All right. By the time this gets released, there might only be 3 people, so get on it. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And you are such an easy interview and so much fun. So thank you very much.
Of course.
And of course, when, you do release the next album, we want to have you back. We'll talk about that one.
Awesome.
Oh, I did want to ask you one more thing. You mentioned your previous albums.
Yes.
Did you release and record those independently, or were those also on Batcave?
Those are all independently.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, thank you. I did a lot of work with other musicians helping me do the backing tracks and producing. Like, I didn't do all of that work, can't take all of the credit, but it was independent, was not on a label. Batcave is the only, Candy Screams is the only release through Batcave Records as of now.
All right, very cool. Well, thank you once again, and that wraps it up for me, so I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You have a good one.
You too.
All right, rockers, so that was Jess-O-Lantern, and she is awesome. What a great interview. Fun to talk to, and great stories. I love how she got started and combined music and horror. I have a soft spot for both of those things, as all you listeners already know. So, really fun interview. Please go check her out. Download Candy Screams. Go to her website, Instagram, support, buy a copy, and just check her out in general. And of course, we thank you for joining us, and we will see you again next week.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.